On today's podcast, we're going to be talking about writer's guilt, so stay tuned. Welcome to the Christian Indie Writers Podcast, where we inform, encourage, and support Christian indie writers on their journey toward publication. I'm Jennifer Carl Tong, and I write historical Christian romance.
I'm Jamie Hirschberger. I write short fiction under the pen name J.R. Nichols.
And we're so happy to have you with us this morning. Jamie, I've missed you so much.
I just came to get all of the I miss yous, and then because I love that, and then the sprint. No, seriously, I've missed you guys too. You'll notice me trying to be funny in the chat about like, can you clone someone to be two different places at the same time? This is where I would be on Fridays at 10.
And you would send the clone to do the other stuff, right?
Yeah.
You'd be here.
That's right.
Catherine's happy that you're here. She says, Jamie. And Piper says, yay, Jamie. Jess is also here. She says, good morning. Good morning, Jess.
Good morning, everybody.
We love our chatter.
Yes, we do. What is on your thumb? Is that your WhatsApp?
Oh, yes. Shh. It's not my thumb.
Okay.
If you are just joining us for the first time, go ahead and pop a hello into the chat so that we can greet you properly. If you're listening to this as a podcast, we love you too and appreciate all that you do by sharing and liking and subscribing. So thank you to all of our friends. So we like to start off every episode with what we call our What's Up, and I will go ahead and start. So it's always a story, right?
Yeah.
So first of all, my girls got back from their mission trip this week. I did not understand why originally the flight that the district booked was the last flight of the day. I'm like, this is hundreds of teenagers. So they went to a thing what's called Nazarene Youth Conference. It happens every 4 years in the Nazarene Church. Over 10,000 teenagers. That's not including the adults that were chaperoning.
Wow.
Over 10,000 teenagers got together for this conference, which was also part conference, part mission project in the city of Tampa Bay. And my two oldest were able to participate in that. And they had a great time. It was awesome. But guess what? Their last flight of the day was, like I knew it would be, a problem because of bad weather, rain. Their flight out of Tampa Bay was delayed, which means they were going to miss their connecting flight. And there was no other connecting flight because it was the last flight of the day. So it was a little stressful for the chaperones and for the parents at first. But what ended up happening is my girls ended up flying into Chicago. They were supposed to fly into Baltimore. They flew into Chicago, stayed the night at Midway overnight in the airport.
Wow.
Our poor chaperone was 7 teenagers, and then flew out and then ended up in Detroit the next morning. They were supposed to come in around midnight and they came in at 10 a.m. the next morning. So it wasn't the worst case scenario. So they're back and safe. That was like a big part of this week. And then along with that, we've been having VBS. Now, I don't know, like if y'all know, I've been able to share that I'm just not a kid person. I like my kids. I like my friends' kids, but I'm just not.
And you like the snarky teenager age.
Yes.
Like, little kids don't understand sarcasm.
No, and they want to hug you all the time and blow their nose. Like, no, I'm not that person. And all of you that are kids ministry people, I adore you so that I don't have to be that. But as I've shared, we're at a church plant now. And when you go to a little church, all hands on deck for VBS. So, you got to help out. And so last night I was asked to do cotton candy. And I'm like, well, how hard can it be? Have you ever met anyone in your entire life that breaks their finger doing cotton candy? Like, first of all, when they asked me, I thought, I'm not that coordinated. It looks like you got to have some flair. And I'm like the biggest klutz I know. And so I was like, sure. I got my fingers caught on the spinny thing in the middle. Not once, but twice. Everyone there is like, we've never heard of this happening. And I did it twice. The first time it hurt so bad. The second time it felt like my finger was going to explode. And so I laughed. My husband took me to the clinic, and sure enough, fractured the tip, like the the end of my finger, the tip of my finger. Yeah, which is there's not a
Okay.
whole lot they could do, but for those of you that are listening, I have a pretty pink splint on my finger,
Which looks
which
like cotton candy.
it
So
does look.
when you said no, that's when I was like, "What happened to you? Is that on your hand?" Oh no, that's my what's up. So I thought, okay, so it isn't a finger cast. And then so I'm trying to figure out what is it. And then you're going on about the story about the delayed flight. I'm like, is it a souvenir? And then you're like, cotton candy. I'm like, is that cotton candy? It is
Nope.
not. It is like a cast or like a
Who breaks their finger doing cotton candy? The softest, fluffiest of confections out there. Who breaks their finger? This
And I'm
gal.
sorry, but like you really do present as somebody who would take it in stride and like, oh yeah, for sure. And like master the cotton candy. Like nobody would suspect that this could happen to you. Do you know what I mean? That's just
Unless you
like
know me well, then you're like, who put her on cotton candy? I had just had it earlier in the day. I've become pretty good friends with our pastor. He's a young guy, and we are the only two paid staff at our church, and he's full time, and I'm just a part time, little person around the building. But anyway, earlier in the day, we had a conversation about how I never learned to ride a bike, and part of it was stubbornness. The other part was I'm just so not coordinated, and so it just was I just couldn't do it. And so I messaged him. I said, "Remember how I said earlier how uncoordinated I am?" And I sent a picture, and I said, "Do we have workman's comp?" He's like, "Maybe we should continue this conversation not through text messaging." He said, "We don't want a paper trail." So it became this big joke. He told me he's going to give me a Purple Heart at church. It just was like, for my getting injured in line of service, and yeah.
Oh,
So
Catherine Carroll says your story belongs in a book. And Jess Gooden
oh,
says that is sad. Cotton candy is supposed to be fun and happy.
right,
Well,
right.
I've heard nightmare stories about running that cotton candy machine anywhere,
Oh,
like candy
really?
floss in your hair and candy
Oh, yeah.
floss everywhere, and that is kind of a big mess.
Yes,
So
it
I
is.
think it's very much anybody who will run the cotton candy machine deserves a Purple Heart.
When you think about it, of all the people that were there, and there are a lot of people from the parent church for the plant that are like kids men people, why did they choose me? Because maybe they all know, like no one wants to run the cotton candy, and Jen just didn't know because she doesn't do kids men. Like, okay. I honestly think I was just the closest adult to standing right there. There was a teenager that was willing to do it, and they asked me to do it with him. I'm like, okay. He did fine. I mean, he's 12 years old, 12 or 13 years old. No issues for him.
Yeah.
I, on the other hand, and I did it twice. It wasn't like I just, oh, how did that happen? Then I did it again. Like, it hurt so bad. I'm like, man, I'm never doing that again. And less than 5 minutes later, and it was just like, and my finger looked all deformed. It looked like I thought I broke it bad but I think it was just the way that it hit a couple different times in the spinny thing. And,
Mhm.
but yeah,
Did
but
you
they
look
gave
like ET trying to phone home?
kind of, yes. Yes, and then so we go to the clinic, the same clinic we always go to. They're really great there. I feel like they should start recognizing
Your
some
regulars,
between
yeah.
me and my husband, because he works construction, he's always hurt himself. But anyway,
Oh.
we went there, and they said, okay, so we can give you some ibuprofen, or there's this shot that we can give you, keto something or other. And the only reason I remember the name is because keto was in it. And
Mhm.
it'll sting a little bit, but like, it will give you much relief from the swelling so much faster. I'm like, yeah, I don't mind a shot. First of all, they weren't kidding with the sting. I felt like I had gotten stung. They gave it to me, and that was fine. By the time I got in the car, I felt like I was getting a bee sting, and it was like spreading up my back. Like it hurt really bad. And then like 4 hours later, I wake up and I can't sleep, and I start itching everywhere. I was like itching everywhere, and I get up and I look in the mirror and I don't see anything, but I just itched everywhere. And I'm like, I wonder if it's that medicine. I lay back down and my lips feel swollen, and
Oh,
I'm like,
no.
what? So I almost messaged you like, Jamie, I'm scared. So I took Benadryl, but I was worried that I wouldn't be able to get up this morning because Benadryl does me in.
Yeah.
So I took some Benadryl. I'm fine. Like it doesn't seem to like it. I can't imagine that 4 hours later, like I would have had a reaction, but I have no other explanation for what I went through at that point. But I got up at 6 this morning. What kind of evil plan was that, Lord? I don't know why I had to get up at 6 this morning after like being up half the night. And yeah, so that's my what's up.
It's kind of funny to see you waving it around because you gesture so much with your hands.
I know. I know. I don't know how I thought I was going to keep it from you before I actually did my what's up. So,
Oh.
all right, Jamie, what's up with you?
Well, I'm here, yay, and occasionally with the hybrid schedule that I have, I will be able to take my lunch break during this hour and join you all, and so that's exciting news.
Yay.
It won't be anything super regular or consistent, but when I can. And then the other thing I wanted to share is the beautiful dedication. Now, I didn't get any permission to read it out loud or share it from
Maria
Joanne,
Johnson.
yeah, she goes under Maria Johnson. That's her author name. So if you want to go and purchase her book series, you won't be sorry. But she did dedicate to us. She acknowledged us. It wasn't a dedication, but just to be technically correct. And it's a beautiful acknowledgement. If you're not a member of our Facebook group, you should go over there and become one so that you can read it. And also, you might want to pick up our book if you like to read about way long time ago in merry old England, because it is way the dark ages, I guess you would say. And it's about a young man who, well, the first book is. So it's a whole series. You need to read the first one so that you get caught up to the third one. And in there is that beautiful acknowledgement. So thanks for that. That's my what's up.
Yeah, that was very sweet. It made me tear up. Thanks a lot, Joe. No, it was very like just humbling too, like, because I don't know that we deserve that, you know? So who would have thought 4 years ago, and we're almost coming up to our 4-year anniversary at the end of this month, or is it no, next month? Our 4-year anniversary. Who would have thought that we would like be sitting here and we would have these kind of friends all around the world, and we would have like books dedicated to us, and like, who are we? We're no one. We're just a bunch of friends that like to talk a lot, really. That's what I feel like so most of the time. So
we're homemade.
Mm-hmm.
She says, thanks for the, go ahead, Jen.
All thanks for the mention. Hi, I count it as a dedication. LOL. Sorry, not sorry. LOL. Absolutely deserved. Love this community. This community loves you too. Maria is such a supporter of everybody else and an encourager, and we just appreciate her so much. And Jess agreed. She said it was so beautiful. Catherine says, "What's up? I finally finished the book I've been struggling with. Yay!
Yay!
She said I did a happy dance when I hit the pre-order button. Good for you." Mm-hmm. All right. Sorry, I got something stuck in my teeth. I hate that, man. Piper says, I would be worried you couldn't get up in the morning. That's what I was afraid of with the Benadryl, to be honest. But I got up. So, yeah. Anywho. And Catherine says, that was beautiful, Maria. I agree. All right. Well, and then let's give an update on Tina. If you are in our Facebook group, you know we had a prayer request out there. Tina had fallen in her kitchen in the dark. She was trying not to turn the lights on because her husband had gone out to the recliner to sleep because of, for whatever reason. And so she was trying not to wake him up, and someone had left the dishwasher door down, and she tripped on that, fell, hit her like eye or her head on the corner of the countertop. And so she had a very, she had a goose egg. She couldn't wear headphones. So that's why we didn't have it last week, because Jamie wasn't available. It was all kind of like last minute. She was in a lot of pain. But on top of that, Tina also had lost a family member that she loved dearly. And so she is actually in Minnesota this weekend for a funeral. So that's why she's not with us at this right now. So please be in prayer for Tina and her family as they say goodbye to someone they love very dearly. All right, one more what's up. Maria says, so yeah, my what's up. Enjoying settling into our new church. Hubs is enjoying his job. Yay. Got books republished and doing some freelance editing. Wow. Editing too? You're putting me to shame, Maria. What is the matter with me? I have food in my teeth, or teeth in my, no, food in my teeth. My eye is itching so bad. I feel like I got something in it. I'm a mess, Jamie. Maybe I should just log off and you should just do the show by yourself.
Sure. That would be an amazing episode.
All right. So speaking of amazing episodes, our topic today is writer's guilt. And this is something that Tina and I talked about actually several weeks ago. And I wasn't sure this episode was ever going to happen because we had planned to do it, and then I don't remember what it was why we had to cancel
Your
before some.
computer just died. And the
Oh
reason I
yeah.
know that is because your sprint is in there with half a sentence and then poof, like you disappeared on it.
Right. Well, I went back in, I added my sprint the rest of it today. But yeah, it was like half sentence. Everything went like haywire. My keyboard and my mouse went out. It just stopped working. Like new batteries and everything, they stopped working. And then so I'm like, no big deal. I have a external camera because right now I'm using the camera on my laptop. But I had bought a camera and paid good money for it. But after using it for a while, I discovered that honestly my laptop camera was way better. So I just went back to my laptop camera. Well, I had this other camera. I'm like, no big deal. I'll put my laptop down here for doing the sprint and like that. And I'll have the camera up here and we'll be all good. Well, something happened hooking that camera up to my laptop, screwed everything up. My computer, it acted like it had gotten possessed. Everything started going haywire. It was the craziest thing. And I got the camera unhooked, and then I couldn't get my laptop camera to work because I had hooked that one up, restarted, tried everything. And then it was like, we were already late for the podcast at that point, and it was just like, I couldn't get my computer to work, period. So yeah, that's what happened. I forgot about that. And then, then the next week we had Drew Wallingford on. So we pushed this to the side because we'd already scheduled him. And then it was supposed to be last week. And then she couldn't make it. Like, anyway, so here we are, finally going to be talking about Writer's Guild. And Tina's not with us. And it was her story. It was her idea. So we'll see how this goes. But, so Tina was in a Facebook group of writers and they started talking about Writer's Guild. And I've heard people talk about this before too. And I experience this. Like, I go to sit down to write and I feel sometimes I feel guilty that my dishes aren't done, that there's laundry to do, that there's homeschooling to be done, other jobs, things I have to do. And so I don't know that I feel guilty as much as I just like, all right, I had to go finish that first and then I'll come back to writing. And then guess what? I don't come back to writing, or I get busy, or it doesn't get done the things I need to get done. Do you ever experience that, Jamie?
It's interesting. No, yes, I don't know. The problem is that my headspace is so far removed from my writer's career. So when I approached the subject, because I wasn't around for the planning, right? And when I thought about this topic so that I could contribute today, my thoughts were more along the lines of that when the writing takes a backseat to the rest of your life and the temptation to feel guilt in that way. So it's still guilt, it's still writer's guilt, but I think it comes in lots of varieties as we're discovering while we talk.
Right, because I feel like it does go both ways. I feel like when I'm not writing, I feel guilty that I don't have my butt in the chair. I'm not getting the editing done. I'm not getting the cover done. I'm not getting the book published. I'm not getting the chapter written. When I got my butt in the chair and I'm writing, I feel like my kids are like needing me. I feel like they don't get enough of me. I feel like I'm not getting my housework is falling apart. And because we both know I am not a domestic diva. My house is generally not gross, but like when you walk into someone's house and they just seem to like it's all put together, that's never me. Like, I never want anybody walking into my house because I feel like there's always gonna be dishes. There's always laundry waiting to be folded and put away. And so maybe it's just a Jen problem. But Tina agreed, though. She's had, because she has her granddaughter with her now in the summertime a lot. And so she kind of said she felt the same way, too. Go ahead.
I think that it's a pretty universal experience, what you say. I think that a lot of people in the listening audience would agree that they've experienced those feelings. I think it's pretty universal for women in general to feel a lot of guilt. I've not experienced life as a man, so I couldn't say, but the more women that I talk to, I think guilt is pretty universal and part and parcel for our experience, really. Yeah. And so I think specifically to writers, it might be just yet another thing for us to feel guilty about, I guess is how I feel.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I wonder if, and we don't have any of our guy chatters, it doesn't look like in the chat right now, but I wonder if it is more of a female writer problem than it is like universal for all writers, because I don't know that my husband, he's not a writer, but I don't know that like when he's doing an activity, if he feels guilty that the dishes aren't cleaned, right?
Mhm.
Or
Right.
yeah. And I also think too that some of this guilt for me also stems from that, like, it's partly guilt, but it's also partly like I have trouble being creative when there is mess around me.
Mm.
I have trouble, which is another reason why I think that I'm struggling with this book. Like we all know that, like the part of the issue is I'm still mourning my mom, and I'm still struggling with
Well,
that.
yeah.
But like my computer is no longer a laptop. It is like I
Mm.
can't move it, right? It's like just before
Mhm.
we started, I slid it a little bit and like chaos started happening. I'm like, "Oh, please don't." But it's desktop now. And so I have to work in this room. This is the same room that I do not just writing, but I do outlining and I do advertising and I do all the business of being a writer too, which before I was able to compartmentalize. I would do the podcast in here and I do advertising in here, but I could take my
Mhm.
laptop and go places where I'd feel more creative. I could go someplace like a coffee shop where there's like ambient noise, but I don't have dishes to do. Right. Or I don't have a vacuum cleaner staring at me, and I can't do that anymore. So I feel like that the mess also affects, like, the guilt that I have about the fact that my house isn't clean enough or organized enough also affects my creativity. Um, yeah. Maybe that's a personality thing though too. Maybe that's just me thing, or maybe it's a woman thing. I don't know. What do you think, Jamie?
Well, I think what Maria says, excuse me, kind of supports the notion that I think maybe it's a human experience, not just a woman's experience. She says for her, it's slightly different. She doesn't have much of an issue with guilt writing, as I see it as my day job, but I often have guilt that the income for writing is sporadic or inconsistent.
Mm,
And it's so I
mm,
mean our outcome or our outline pretty much is like what is guilt and what is the experience, and then we kind of get into a little bit about like what we might do to resolve it. But I just kind of want to take a minute and to talk about like, is guilt, like, should we maybe like see if guilt is serving us? Because
mm,
when you look at child rearing, for example, they say that guilt and shame are not motivators to get the behavior that you desire out of your children. And yet we
mm.
guilt and shame ourselves and expect to get different or better outcomes. And I
Wow.
wonder if we are like, just need to examine, where is this guilt coming from? Because
Mhm.
again, as I was just kind of mulling over what could be whatever, and I'm thinking, if you convinced, your husband to buy a book package where your book is going to be promoted to the entire universe, and you convinced him to invest money that you really shouldn't have, and now you feel guilty because you haven't finished the first draft, right?
Mhm. Right?
You need to sit and examine. So, what what am I feeling, and also what is his reality of this? Do you know what I mean? So, like,
Yeah.
is the guilt based in anything real, first of all? And
Mm.
second of all, is it serving you or propelling you to do anything different?
That's the good part right there. Like, that'll preach right there, Jamie. Cause like, no. For me, no. Like, I can sit and be like, "Oh, I gotta go do this because," or whatever, but it's not serving me because my house isn't clean and the book isn't done, right? And so I do like what Catherine said, because I feel like it's very much a Christian indie writer podcast response, but she says, "Would it help to make office hours?" Yes, 100% it would help to make office hours. And do I need to do that? Yes. What's stopping me from doing that? Guilt. Because I feel like once I gotta get a few things in order and then I can commit myself to certain things, right? And that's all on me. That is not like, my situation has changed. It for sure has. Years ago, a few years back when we first started this podcast, I was dedicated to office hours. I was writing all the time. I was getting things done. But that was before I lost my basically almost my entire safety net of like family network.
Yeah.
Like, it is, when you think about what I had in my life in 2019, 2018, 2017, let's go back there. What I
Yeah.
had in my life in 2017, to what I have now, it's just my immediate family and my dad now. And before I had like a dedicated aunt and uncle that like drop the hat, do anything. They, come take my kids out for ice cream and this were always there for me. I had a mom that was the best grandma in the world, the best mom in the world. And again, drop everything. I just had this support system that if I needed to lean on it so that I could accomplish office hours, so that I could accomplish
Mhm.
things. Plus my kids were in public school. Now, let me say, they're never going back to public school. That is not happening. But I had a lot of hours in the day that I did not have to worry about another human being except for myself. And it
Mhm.
makes a big difference. And my husband actually was concerned. That was his biggest concern about homeschooling, was that it was going to affect my writing career. And I was like, no, no, of course it won't.
Well,
Yes,
and
it did.
you said all of those things, which are
Mhm.
very valid reasons for not achieving what you thought you might. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of the times when we don't achieve what we think we might, there's where the guilt would come in.
Mm.
Because I battle like because I don't want to feel guilty, so I don't want to say, "Oh, I feel guilty that my book is not done."
Mhm.
But what so I very much intellectualized, like you said, well, why isn't my book getting done? And are
Mhm.
there things I could change? And as I walked through, just like you did, here are the things that are shipwrecking my productivity or my creativity or the reasons that I have writer's block to avoid feeling guilty and shooting all over myself. Um,
Mhm.
I want to point out to you something that I discovered, which was this thought that when you are procrastinating, which some of you might be thinking I'm just simply procrastinating, but that the idea that possibly what you are doing is trying to avoid feeling the feelings that you
Mm.
feel when you are participating in that activity. And somebody
Yeah.
reminded me that writing for me is associated with an entirely different life than I had
Oh,
before, and for you
yes.
perhaps. So
Yeah.
so I had a friend encourage me, go buy a scented candle. And when you have a day that you actually write or are productive, take a big whiff of that scented candle because that's going to associate something positive with the act of writing. And
Mm.
so I think I'm a little bit off topic, but just
No,
kind of like,
well, maybe we are, but
yeah.
that's a great suggestion, Jamie, and also some auditory cues too, because like, there is a certain playlist, there's a certain, like, binary beats music video on YouTube, and the video's actually gotten
Oh, yeah.
and every time I use that, it takes me back to our first writing retreat. And I
Right.
have such happy memories of that writing retreat. I got so much accomplished. We laughed so hard in those twin beds upstairs. We, like, drank some good coffee. We had some good food. Like, I have so many good memories of that. And, like, when I just, like, plug into that, sometimes that just helps me. So, like, a candle, that's a great idea. The
Mhm.
listening, like, finding something, like, maybe you need to find a new playlist, or maybe you need to go back
Right.
to that one and remember, like, yes, like, your life has changed, but there are parts of your life in the past here that they're like the retreats and this podcast and the people like that, that's still constant in your life. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? We're still there
Mhm.
for you. So, things have changed, but yes. And I think that what Catherine says too, she says, those are all huge, Jen. Plus, grief is tiring. You are experiencing a different grief, but we're both experiencing grief. And it is. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted from it. So,
I
and she,
just hate I have a personal so you say, well, maybe it's a Jen thing. Well, for sure, I have a Jamie thing. And I do not like to make a promise to myself and not keep it.
mhm.
And so I'm very glad that I've not ever said this book is going to be done by whatever day or whatever. So I
Right.
can't feel like I've let myself down. But I do wonder, like, so again, to examine why am I not doing the thing that
Mhm.
is making me potentially feel guilty, right?
Mhm. Right.
If you're not supposed to say, well, I should be doing this and I should be doing that, like if guilt isn't going to motivate you to actually do it,
Mhm.
what is? Because again, with parenting or just kind of whatever, they would be like, well, don't guilt or shame yourself into, or your children into trying to do things for you. Well, what are you supposed to do? Because if you were raised in a household where guilt and shame were supposed to motivate you, you
Mhm.
have to learn, well, what would? And
Right.
and it's like, I really personally have discovered that I think I need to want the book to be done more than I don't want to do all of that work that I know it
Mhm.
requires for me. And that's where I need to be. But I think everybody else has to figure out kind of their own thing.
Well, let's talk about some of the things that Tina and I had discovered that we thought about that ways to combat the guilt first. And I think, and through this conversation, talking about these things, I think that we'll also be able to talk about what you were just talking about and answer some of those
Mhm.
things. So, one of the first things we came up with was evaluate it appropriately.
Yeah,
So, like you were saying, guilt for Tina, it is appropriate right now that she prioritize her granddaughter.
of
That's
course.
appropriate.
Sure.
For me, it is appropriate during the school year that I prioritize homeschooling for my
Right.
children. I only have so many
Mhm.
years with them. But appropriately evaluating is right now a time that I have to prioritize my children. Obviously, okay, I'm talking about like in general, yes, my kids are always first. But like in my mornings, do I need to make sure that they're no, they are old enough to take care of themselves. I don't have to fix them breakfast anymore. The summertime, it should be my time that like the morning is all about me and getting my writing done, right? So there's an appropriate evaluation, I think. The next thing we talked about was leave the situation, which is difficult for me, though I do have a really old kind of cheap Mac. I don't like using it. I use it specifically just for the internal layouts of my books so I can use Vellum.
Mhm.
I can type on it. I would have to, like, then come home and then, like but I can. So I could go to a coffee shop. I could go to a friend's house. I can go to a park or someplace where my kids can, like, enjoy themselves. I can like, I don't need a babysitter. This is more of, like, for Tina. She could find a babysitter, like, she could have her daughter watch her granddaughter for her. There are things that we can do to leave our situation, which I think for me, that's the number one thing to get me back in writing is I gotta get out of my house because the mess will always be there. We're in the middle of construction still. Like, this house is always gonna I feel like it's never gonna be done. So, do I wait until the house is done? No, and perfectly clean? No, I need to get out of the situation. And then finally we said stop and fix the problem. So
Right.
rearrange your schedule. So for me, like maybe I have to like start writing at night during the school year, which is rough for me because it just isn't where I'm creative. The mornings are better for me, but maybe I have to find that creativity there. Tina said, do the dishes really quick. And I think there's some genius in that because I had a roommate that once said to me, it never takes more than 10 minutes to do dishes.
But
Sometimes it
just
does, but in general, you could whip out most of your dishes in 10 minutes, and then the ones that want let them soak, those can soak, but, like, you really it's only 10 minutes of your life, right, to get some of this stuff done that is, like, a huge burden on me. Spend 10
and
minutes and
then
do it and then walk away.
remember to close the dishwasher door when you walk
Yeah.
away from
Yes.
doing the dishes.
I
I
hope
have
Tina's
to
listening.
um, I feel like, the appropriate evaluation and then do something to fix it is important because I feel like really conflicted because, writing is a craft and, butt in the seat, I can write, 900
Mhm.
words in 15 minutes. So I should be able to put out a novel a month. No problem. Like, there is the hustle and productivity component that can tempt you to feeling guilt. And,
Mhm.
but if that's really the promise that you made to yourself, or that's what your business plan says, and see,
Mhm.
when we talk about doing that business plan, we talk about it to kind of help you in times like this because it can help you recommit to doing the things you said you were going to do because
Mhm. Yes.
I think that the biggest thing that makes me feel guilt is if I'm being the person who just is like using whatever, making excuses, making
Mhm.
excuses. I don't want to be a person who is making excuses. And if you are a person who is making excuses, then stop or fix it or whatever, or decide like you're okay being a person who is making excuses. But I think honestly evaluating and reflecting is really important.
Right. We've got some gold happening in our chat
Yeah,
too.
sure do.
Piper says guilt often stems from unmet expectations, and I've been living life worth the mindset of just doing what needs to be done. But this week realized I can't do it all. I can't do all of it.
Oh, no, you can't. Poor Piper.
Jess says, I also very much dislike breaking promises to myself. But for a while, I was breaking promises to myself. Recently, I've been telling myself that I would break that promise of going to McDonald's to the kids. Why are you okay breaking the promises to yourself that you will write your story? It's a mindset shift, but is working so far. That's great. I agree with that. Let's see. Maria says, for me, it's reminding myself to view success as an author in different ways rather than viewing success in terms of income. Example, reaching individual readers, new reviews, etc., rather than sales, etc. I think that's genius.
Well, it is, but then I would say also to Maria, like she was saying, she kind of battles with the temptation to feel guilt about her income. And really, that
Mhm.
is not a you problem, Maria. If like you not selling books, like someone else not taking the action to buy your book is not something you should feel guilty about, in my opinion.
Mhm. Right.
And that's not kind of trying to tell you what to do or kind of whatever, but I feel like sometimes the guilt is just like, I mean, I don't want to say wrong minded. It sounds like really super harsh, but like you can't control another person opening their purse strings. And I do appreciate that you are battling it with these practical ways of
Mhm.
looking at it. But I want to encourage you because I feel like you shouldn't be feeling guilty about book sales. That's just
Right.
me.
But I do appreciate what you're saying too, because like I think that there are certain times that I focus on the wrong thing
Mm-hmm.
and to be like I'm doing it right or I'm successful right now or whatever. So I have a little story to tell. So this week we're trying to schedule a retreat for our teens and we can't get a speaker. Everyone we've like thought we're gonna get they've either not been able to or had to cancel. And so I went on a retreat. I don't know if you guys remember back in May, a leadership retreat, and I met a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of people from a bunch of different denominations, good people. But my roommate was from a church down in Florida. She was so great. We exchanged numbers. Well, as I was talking this week about youth retreat, um, a gentleman popped in my head that I had met briefly at this retreat, but he works with this woman and she
Mm.
spoke so highly of him. Well, anyways, I mentioned that to my pastor and he's like, give a call. Let's see what, maybe this guy is who we're supposed to, book. So I have not talked to this woman since May. I call and I went to text her and my phone started calling. I don't know what happened. And I'm like, well, okay, I guess I'm supposed to call this person. She answered, "Hey, Jen." And it was so nice to hear her voice, like to remember that like I've made a new friend, right? But anyway, long story short, she was on vacation. She's like, "So weird that you just called me." She's like, "I'm holding your book in my hand right now." She's like,
Wow.
yeah, she said that she went on vacation. It's a family vacation, and she mentioned to her mom, "Yeah, I met this person, and I'm gonna read her book this weekend." Well, her mom downloaded the book and read it before she did, and now is like gonna read the next book. And it's like, so it's a couple book sales, right? But that's not what mattered. What mattered is like this is a real person that is reading my book that I did not know before and is somewhere else in the country. She's up in Minnesota and it just spreading that way. So to me, it was like if I had never written my book, it wouldn't be out there for total strangers to read, right? And
Right.
that's a
Yeah.
success right there, right? I'm not selling millions of books, but I sold that one to someone I didn't know, and that was fun for me.
You're right. That's a good point, Maria.
So honestly, the the last thing that I really want us to leave with is to realize that guilt is internal. Jamie's been kind of like hinting at that and saying this throughout, but like this isn't probably from anyone else. Like some of the things I feel guilty about, I don't think my family cares if the dishes are done or not. Clearly, because 'cause they're not getting up and doing them. I don't think they care if I spend 5 hours a day with them, my daughters. I don't think they care. Like, I'm in the room, if they need me, they come and get me. Like, the things that I'm feeling guilty about, it's inside of me, and it's a struggle I have. It is not a real thing, and if I can
Mhm.
put some that into if I can realize that and I can start to departmentalize this guilt and realize this is not real, this is just something inside of me that I'm internalizing, then maybe I can like let go of it. So
And sometimes I think that guilt is a blindfold or a
mhm,
bandage, because if you're busy feeling guilty for what is going on, it sometimes will prevent you from getting to the bottom of why results aren't happening. It's
right.
easier just to feel guilty about it than
Mhm,
to exhume a little bit and figure it
mhm.
out.
Agreed. All right. Well,
All right.
it is time for us to move on to Jamie's favorite part of the episode, the
Best part of the week. Oh.
feeding of the bags. You must have missed it so much, Jamie.
I have missed it so much.
All
And
right.
then I wrote what I wrote today. Blah.
Well, okay, so I'm gonna have you go first because
All
mine's
right.
gonna be a bit of a story because of the finger, right? So the finger sounds so bad.
All right.
I'm giving Jamie the finger.
Well, today, our writing sprint topic was guilt. And did you
Mhm.
put it in quotes? I don't know if you did or not.
It's just supposed to be a theme or an
Okay,
idea. So you didn't have
great.
to use the word, but
And I want to encourage everybody to spend 15 minutes writing about guilt, and to share it if you care to in the Facebook group, or to just put it on your blog or your social media or kind of whatever. Because if it's been a while since you've written, you might like percolate some good ideas or revive your love for the craft or something.
mhm.
All right. So here's my sprint about guilt. I don't function on guilt anymore. She speared another chili cheese fry and slid it through the pile of ketchup on her side plate. What are you talking about? I said, in a tone that probably sounded a little more disgusted than I meant it to, on account of the ketchup. She had to bend the fry in half with her upper and bottom sets of teeth as it passed them on its way into her mouth, and she chewed for a few silent seconds, bobbing her head in a rhythm with the motion and rolling her eyes up into her head. These are so awesome, she said, with a hand raised in front of her mouth as she spoke. I appreciated the gesture, a universal one I had made myself in the past to make speaking with one's mouth full more appetizing to the hearer, but I still noticed flecks of spittle flying and winced.
Ugh.
I picked up my own fork and shoved a bit of potato around on my own side plate. So she was done trying then, had given up. There was no way she was going to fit into the dress she'd bought for the wedding. No way she was going to look thebomb.com in pictures the way that she had ranted about only 4 short weeks ago. Can I get you ladies anything else? I smiled up at the handsome young waiter who'd been taking such good care of us that afternoon and almost pulled the joke of looking over each shoulder as if to say, ladies, there are ladies here. But I thought better
Mhm.
of it, and instead I said, I don't think so. Tiramisu, she said, scraping another mountain of fries onto her side plate, and only one fork. If she jabbed her fork menacingly in my direction, doesn't have enough sense to know what's good for herself, she ain't getting none of mine. I feel that, the waiter said, laughing. I'll have that right out for you. Coffee to go with? Yes, absolutely. Cream, sugar? Not with dessert. It's sweet enough. You are so right. Be right back. I was depressed. Why? I wondered. This decision had nothing to do with me. I feel like you're letting
Mhm.
yourself down, I finally announced, as if I had been processing my thoughts and feelings aloud, and this was an anticipated climax to an impassioned conversation. She pulled
Mhm.
a face that read, I understand, but said, who do you think I'm letting down? Yourself? Why do you believe that? Because of everything you said you wanted. But why did I want those things? I considered what I'd heard her express she desired to look better in pictures. Look better to who? To look better in clothes. Look better for her? Again, as if reading my thoughts, she said, I'll be looking at myself for 5 seconds in a mirror before I head out the door, but everyone else will be looking at me for the entirety of the event. I shifted in my seat and hugged myself. I was starting to get it, but it still felt wrong.
Mhm.
I was never doing it for me. Well, unless you count the twisted up way in which I thought it would get me the love I wanted, but never thought I was deserving of as long as I look like this. She put her fork down. Dang, those are good. Excuse
Mhm.
me. We both looked up. My name is Melissa. She slid a piece of paper in front of my friend. I have to take over your table. My friend and I locked eyes. I knew she was thinking the worst. The server continued. My manager said Toby could only give you his number if he agreed to let someone else finish out the service over here. She laughed. It's totally breaking the rules.
3, 2, 1. That's awesome, Jamie. Why did you think that wasn't good? So when we stopped, she's like, and then I wrote what I wrote. Blah. Why is that blah?
It's
What is
trite and
Oh,
derivative.
whatever. I love it. First of all, okay. So only you can write someone eating French fries and it be like just so good. And like I feel like I am there. And I love this character. I love that she has come to the realization that she doesn't need to look good because it was for others. It wasn't for herself. And yeah, just so much packed into just a few short words and like with these characters and it's a complete story. It's an absolutely complete story. And I love that. So, but
Thank you.
who was he gonna give his number to?
He
Which
gave
one
it
of
to
them?
her. It was the paper went down in front of her.
In front of the bride.
Well, she wasn't a bride. She was like a guest or
Oh.
a bridesmaid or something. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
But maybe she was the bride, which I thought about that later. Well, that would be really complicated because like Toby's looking pretty cute, but whatever.
I love it. I loved everything about it.
I
Like,
appreciate that.
it's just so good to hear your writing again.
Yeah,
Cath
it was good to be
Catherine
writing
says,
again.
"Oh my gosh, that's awesome." I agreed. I agree. Um,
I appreciate that.
and
Thanks,
I
Jen.
love that we were able to see this person from her friend's perspective too, which, like,
Mhm.
adds just a whole 'nother layer because the friend is not there yet. She's still struggling with, like, I don't know why I was upset that she was doing this. I didn't like, she didn't have any skin in the game kind of a thing, but yet she, for some reason, still felt like that her friend was, like letting herself down or something, and I just love that whole perspective. That was a good choice. Very good choice.
Thanks. I appreciate a self-aware friend is a friend
Mm.
indeed.
Mhm.
Well, thanks for that. I appreciate the kind words, but I really
Yeah.
want to know what you did with this prompt as well.
Well, okay, so because of the finger, um, I can't t I can't type right now.
Oh no.
Like, I tried and I couldn't, and so before, I did my sprint early because I thought, well, when we sprinted, I forgot that you were not gonna be able to join me for sprinting. When we sprinted together, I was gonna have to, like, fix things. So what I did was in, Google Docs, they have voice typing,
Nice.
and I'd never tried it before, and so I tried it, and it's a hot mess. Like and so I stopped for a minute and I'm like, "Ugh," and I'm like, "You know what? I'm just gonna do it and I'm gonna share it because I feel like this is part of the experience of being a writer is trying new things." And so I'm just gonna be
Mhm.
completely transparent. Not only that, I'm gonna upload a PDF of it into our group. So if you're not a member of our group, go to the group so you can read this. It is a hot mess. One thing I learned pretty quickly is that yes, it'll do periods and commas and exclamation points. It will not do quote marks.
Hmm.
I don't know why. If you've ever used Dragon, which I have Dragon, I've never really spent a whole lot of time trying to train it and trying to get it, which maybe I should, but I had heard that Word and Docs had basically done as well as Dragon, and it's built into apps that you already know, right? So I'm like,
Mhm.
so I just kind of like haven't even looked over at my software for Dragon, which don't even know where it is right now. It's here somewhere. Um, so I'm like, well, you know what? I'm going to give Docs a try. I guess I'm gonna have to give Word a try because Docs was a big disappointment. So this will be kind of hard. But the good thing is, in less than 15 minutes, I got almost 600 words. That's
Nice.
almost double what I've been getting lately in my 15-minute sprint. But there's a whole lot to fix. So it's one of those things you think about, like, is it worth it to get more words on the paper or not? What I've discovered for this one is that my mouth moved faster than my brain did. I didn't know
Hmm.
where I was going, where sometimes when I type in a sprint, I've got that speed down. Will that change if I do this enough times? I think so. I think that I could get to the point where it feels comfortable. This did not feel comfortable to me.
How
So
long do you have your finger doodad?
6 weeks.
Oh, because like what I'm hoping or thinking is maybe you'll be itching to get back to it because you'll have been denied the opportunity to write. Do you know what I mean? It might
Yeah.
feel different to you. Yeah.
Or maybe I'll be forced to really learn how to do voice texting or voice
Yeah.
typing. So, all right. So it literally says, all right, so I might stop a few times. I don't like this. I don't think I'm going to use this. Like at one point I had to stop and I'm like, I don't know what event I'm talking about here. So I just put a bunch of X's in. So, all right, here we go. It literally says open quote, because that's what I said. I know what you're about, Kate McNeil. Close quote. Tell me, Mrs. McGuire, what is it you think I'm about? You're in here, just try to force me into marriage, hoping that you'll be able to compromise me in some way and then force me into marriage. All right, I'm going to stop reading it poorly. I'm going to try to make sense of it as I'm reading it, okay?
Mhm.
But let me tell you what, Mr. McNeil, there ain't no amount of shame or embarrassment or compromise that you can put me in that will make me marry you. Cade threw his head back and laughed. Mrs. McGuire, the only thing I'm guilty of is a bent towards a good Samaritan lifestyle. The last thing on my mind is marriage. I ain't never been married. I ain't never gonna be married. You ain't fooling me, she said. Every man wants a woman that he can boss around and to take care of him, but I'm done with that. Cade put his hands on his hips. You can take my word for it, ma'am. The last thing I want in my life is another woman to go messing with my heart, only to rip it out when a better option comes around. Colleen scoffed, but the sound came up short when she saw the earnestness in the man's eyes. She didn't know what to think of what he just shared. It was hard for her to imagine a man like this, the hulking figure that Cade McNeil made standing there in her little cabin, that a man as big and as strong as the man that faced her now could ever have been shattered from the inside out by an old woman. She wasn't an old one, by a woman. Mr. McNeil must have been able to sense her disbelief because after a moment of silence, he sighed and dropped his head a bit. Her name was Charlotte. He walked over to the kitchen table and sat down. Part of her wanted to chastise this man for his rudeness. She hadn't asked him to take a seat at her kitchen table, but a larger part of her wanted to know more about this Charlotte, the woman who had broken the heart of this man she assumed hadn't had one. Kate McNeil, sorry, I just can't get past that, laid his hat on the table and ran his fingers through his brown, wavy hair. She hadn't noticed his hair was wavy before and so thick. She was my sweetheart before the war. Her father owned the plantation next to ours. I asked her to marry me and she said yes. But then the war started and I chose to fight for the North. The North? But I thought you said you were from the South. Yes, I know, Cade said slowly. Born and raised in the South, but educated in the North. My parents were born and raised in the North and thought that a Northern education was important. Our plantation wasn't as large as the others and we never owned slaves. My father made his money in other business dealings. So when the war broke out, it made sense to me to fight on the right side. And to me, that was the North. And your parents, where did their loyalties lie? Cade shrugged. The North mostly until, I don't know what happened. Something happened.
Mhm.
My dad told me that politics weren't always black and white, but that's not how most people felt in the South, including Charlotte. While I was gone fighting the war, she found a man that was as strong a Southerner as she was and married him. That must have been terrible, Colleen agreed. Did you know the man she ended up marrying? Yes, ma'am, Cade said. He was my brother. 3, 2,
Whoa.
1. So I'm good. All right. There's many things I hate and then I want to kind of unpack. And I know I'm not supposed to do that, but I feel like yeah, I guess I should keep quiet. Go ahead and say what you want to say, and then I've got lots to say about this.
Well, just like what you said about my situation, there's a lot packed into this little scene. I mean, the ideal of who Cade was and where he comes from and what he has going on with his personal life. I mean, for his brother to be married to his sweetheart kind of explains what he's doing off all on his own without any family around. If
Right.
he's someone who we think is like a family inclined person, as I have grown to believe him to be. So that's really revealing. Catherine Carroll says he was my brother. Boom.
Boom.
Those are satisfying parts to write, aren't they?
She also says open quote, close quote doesn't work. It does not. And I even researched it really quick and they do not. That's not the commands. It has very limited commands on Docs. Word, I think it does work. I got to try that out and play around with that some. Or I'm just going to have to find my software for Dragon and go for it. So
Is this your right or left hand?
my right hand.
Oof.
And I'm right-handed.
Is it your clicky finger for your mouse?
Like, how am I going to pick my nose now? Like, I don't even know. My daughter said you have to use your left. I'm like, I'm not that coordinated. Duh. See, I'm not that coordinated.
It's just so massive too. I'm
I
sorry. It's
know.
very
It's
comical.
like
It's completely comical.
it's
Oh
so
my
huge.
gosh.
I know.
Oh man, what a drag.
All right, so I'm gonna be, and I never do this. I know we're not supposed to, but I'm gonna be negative about this because I think that this is a learning experience for all of us. Okay, so my biggest problem with this is how info dumpy it is, and when I'm typing, it's a slower pace, and I've got a rhythm, and I've been writing for a while, and so I would not have info dump like this. But with for some reason trying to dictate this, I wasn't prepared for the pace. Does that make sense? And
It does.
I feel like this is workable. I could go back in and I could like spread it out more and it wouldn't be so info dumpy. And I mean, obviously I like the boom moment at the end. That was my whole point. Um, so, but this is very much like, this is not how this is going to go down. It needs to be a lot more emotional pull. I'm not sure it's going to be from her perspective, which is what this is, or if it's going to be from his. I'm not sure, but so yeah.
But I think you're right. Like, this is what sprints are sometimes. Sprints sometimes, and most of the time, and almost all of the time. Okay. You see us
Mhm.
doing these are like performative or something. But
Yeah.
I've sat down recently just to get back into my story and just brain dumped some things that I knew were gonna, and it was like a sprint, and it was just
Mhm.
a brain dump of this stuff is all true about this story.
Right.
And it was not ever meant to see the light of day. It was just to be writing. And so it
Yes.
doesn't always have to be beginning, middle of an end and polished.
Right. And especially if you're trying something new out like dictating. Now, this isn't my first foray into dictating. Back many years ago, before the podcast even, I tried out Dragon's app for for your phone.
I remember.
And it was a free trial. After the free trial is $15 a month, which I could not justify $15 a month. But I'll tell you that app on the phone is way better in my experience than Dragon for your computer. It was like you didn't have to train it. It was spot on. It was just, it did really well. And I wrote an entire kind of like novella or like short story, at least. I'll at least call it that. Called The Duke's Proposal, which I'd probably give a different name because
Mhm.
there's about a million Duke's Proposal books out there. And it wasn't bad. I mean, it needs work. It's not great, but it wasn't bad. And I wrote it in a whole weekend. Like, and it's somewhere around 30,000 words in a whole weekend. So
Mhm.
there is some positive reasons to do this, but anywho, so that was my foray today. So Jess says those are things you can fix through uh though you started gluing the frame together. Later you can go back and use Windex on the glass to see the print painting clear. I agree, absolutely agree, but I also know that like I could just write it better from the beginning. So, but it could happen through dictation. So all right, we're coming close to the end of our hour. And so, Jamie, what is
I
next
have
for
to
you?
go.
You got to
Yeah,
go.
what's
So,
next
real
for
quick.
me is to be writing once again, and I'll hopefully see you all soon.
Yep. And for me, the next thing is I got to work on the book cover. So that's what you're going to see. I can do that without this finger. So thanks so much, everybody who joined us. And sorry we're jumping off here fast, but we love you guys. And we'll see you next week with Tina this time. All right. Bye.
Yay, bye.